Okay, so today we're going to take a look at the brand new Sony MDR MV1 studio headphones. And there is lots to talk about with this headphone. I always used to do the intros to videos being like, this is an open back dynamic driver moving coil headphone, blah, blah, blah. You know what it is. It's an open back headphone. And today we're going to talk about it. All right, just a quick disclaimer here. This unit was sent over by Sony for review, so big thanks to Sony for sending it in for us to check out. But of course, I've not been paid to say anything in particular about this headphone, and all thoughts and opinions here are my own. Now, let's dive into the Sony MDR MV1. And what is this? Well, this is essentially supposed to be a replacement or upgrade over the MDR 7506, which is one of their legendary studio headphones that everybody knows. It's a very commonly used headphone. You see it all the time. In my mind, this actually competes more with Beyerdynamic headphones. But I want to leave you guys at the end of this video with an open question, and that is, what is a good studio headphone? What makes a headphone good for pro use? And whether or not that should be different from headphones that are meant to be neutral or referencey, for just listening. Surely there has to be more to it than just putting a label on the box saying studio headphones or meant for pro use or whatever, right? There's got to be more to it than just the marketing. But we'll get to that. First, let's talk about the build, design, and the comfort and all of that good stuff. Now, the cable you get for this headphone, I really like this. This is, it's just a 1/4 inch. The cable itself is not super tangly or springy or anything like that. And it's just a single entry cable with this locking mechanism that just plugs into the side of the headphones, just like this. And then you twist it to lock it in place. And I know also that a single entry is a common thing for pro headphones, pro use headphones. You see this on a lot of them. And I think it does make sense. You don't want too many cables in your way, and going single entry allows for that. But no complaints on the cable. And it kind of makes me wonder, like, well, why can't we have nice cables in all things? Looking at you, Hi-Fi Man. And as far as power requirements goes, this is extremely easy to drive. I'll leave the specs up on the screen here, but you can run this from basically anything. Now, let's talk about the build quality here. Now, when I first took this headphone out of the box, I thought this has got to be some of the cheapest materials because this headphone is so incredibly lightweight. Like, it weighs hardly anything at all. And then I looked a little bit closer and started to feel the material here. This is actually metal. It doesn't feel cheap when you take a closer look. And I actually think it's almost to their detriment because when people pick up, a pair of, high-end nice headphones that have a little bit of like weight to them and a little bit of girth and gumption to them, that often feels like there's more quality involved in the materials. And you do not get any of that experience with this product whatsoever. Like, you pick it up and you're like, there's nothing to it. But there is. And you can see these are sort of like metal slats that go all the way around. And it's so light, it's so comfortable when I put it on my head. It's remarkable. And in my view, comfort is equally important to sound quality. You can kind of, hold them up both as like the key things that make a product good or bad. And for this, it's so unbelievably comfortable. You get these massive pads that are extremely cushiony and soft. And the pads, they are, by the way, also removable. This kind of design reminds me almost a little bit of what you get with the Sennheiser HD600 series, as far as it's just kind of a basic driver integrated into an open baffle with some, acoustic material surrounding it. Now, let's get into the sound quality here, and this is where I'm going to take the opportunity to do some education on the measurements here. If you guys don't care about the graphs and you just want the simple conclusion of what this is, how it sounds like, and whether or not it's good, you are allowed to click on the timestamp below. That'll take you to the conclusion. But the deal there is that you have to be subscribed in order to do that. That's just how that works, all right? And also, it makes me smile. You know the drill. So let me now move over to the graphs and we'll do an analysis of that. All right, so here we are with the raw measurements on the B&K 5128, and this is our target here. And I just want to give you guys an indication of what this target is and why we're using it. Essentially, this is the diffuse field head related transfer function of the measurement rig that has been tilted by 10 dB. So basically, this is with a downward slope applied, the slope that is preferred in both speakers and headphones. If the shape of the frequency response matches reasonably well with the shape of a diffuse field head related transfer function, it is going to be generally well received for timbre or tone color. Now, this is the raw measurement here, and you can see that the Sony MDR MV1 is bass boosted It's an open back headphone with a bass boost, and it is also treble boosted, significantly treble boosted, specifically at around 6K, and then also up. It is boosted above that as well. And so I would describe this as having a fairly straightforward V-shaped presentation. So again, bass and treble forward, but it is one that does also have a reasonable adherence to the shape of the diffuse field head related transfer function. And depending on your treble sensitivity, this is bound to be a little bit too bright, I think, for most people. And I'll show you guys how this looks in some other visualizations here as well. Here is the compensated graph, and now you'll notice there's something different with the way that this compensated graph is represented compared to what you might be used to with a flat line. So what's going on here? Well, this is that same measurement compensated or normalized directly to flat diffuse field, then with a downward tilt applied here, and that's the dotted line that you can see. So that's the 10 decibel tilt. Now you might be asking, well, why show it like this? Why not show it flat? And that is a good question. The short answer is that the ear transfer function is objective and has nothing to do with the preference tilt from bass to treble that people like. And we wanted to make sure that that tilt is also represented so that people know this is a preference tilt. That's why you have this dotted line, going down, starting in the bass and then going down as it gets into the treble. And we wanted to make sure that these two elements, that both the diffuse field head related transfer function and the downward tilt that people prefer in speakers and in headphones, is well represented in the data. And we will have some more information on this in the coming videos because there is more to it than just this. We also want to be showing preference boundaries and windows around this line here, so it won't be just strictly a flat line, but you get the idea. So getting back to the MDR MV1, this is actually a headphone that I think if you listen to this and you are looking for a V-shaped kind of sound, maybe that will be acceptable to you. But I think for most people, this one is going to be a little bit too bright. It's going to come across a little bit too zingy there in the treble. Now let's take a look at how this measures on the Gross. And this is again Harman Over Ear 2018, which is the largest body of preference research that we have on this topic. And once again, you can see basically the same thing. Yes, it is elevated in the bass, in the mid bass and the upper bass, but it is also elevated in the sub bass down to around 40 hertz, maybe even 30 hertz, and then it starts to taper off like most open back headphones do. And then you get here 6 kilohertz and above. Particularly in the lower treble, you get a boost there. And I do personally think that this is the biggest issue with this headphone and for how it sounds, and I do think it's worth EQing it. Conveniently, it is very easy to EQ this headphone. You really just drop down this region. You can do it in a number of ways. I'll leave a EQ profile in the description, and given that it is so easy to EQ, I think this is an excellent candidate for it. But nonetheless, let me talk a little bit about some of the subjective qualities to the experience. I would put this in between the HD600 and the Audio-Technica R70X. And for the strengths that it has, it is similar to the ones from the R70X. So it is more about spaciousness. We might call that soundstage or head stage. It is good for that. Localization doesn't really exist in headphones the way that it does in speakers, so just keep that in mind. But, in headphones, this does have a good effect for that sense of openness and airiness and spaciousness because of the treble boost. For that sense of physicality and impact, this is nothing crazy. This isn't, bad by any means. Like, it doesn't sound meaningfully compressed in that regard, but it also isn't something that's going to wow you or take your head off with the physicality. Really, I think for some of the subjective descriptions, the party trick for this one is more about that sense of airiness and openness that it has, which is nice. Now, there is one other thing, and it is that Sony also has their 360 reality audio. And that's not something to do with the headphones, it's something to do with the mixes that they do. It is an effect that I personally don't find all that compelling, but maybe some other folks do. And if you're really into that, then maybe it is worth considering this headphone, because I'm led to believe that they did at least produce this headphone with that in mind. Now, let's do some comparisons, and the straightforward ones here are with the Bear Dynamic headphones. It is treble boosted, and I do find it fatiguing. I think most people will find it fatiguing, especially in the lower treble. But some of those beyerdynamic headphones, like the DT-990 and the DT-1990, they are absolute treble murder with the sibilance. And in that respect, those headphones are often considered studio headphones because they have an elevation to a region in the mix that people are trying to pay attention to and try and identify resonances and flaws in the mix. This headphone would be good for that application as well. You can use it as a tool to find those issues in the mix where you might have sibilance or something like that. But I think you have to know that. You have to know that this is not a neutral reference sounding headphone. It's more of that, like, let's put a microscope on the S's, F's, and T's, and let's identify them in the mix where they are, and let's reduce those, you know, in whatever manner we want to do. I'm not totally sold on the process that would require this type of headphone over a reference set of headphones that was aiming for a little bit more neutrality, at least when being used in a studio environment. I think that's really the question that we need to ask ourselves. And that's why I want to hear from you guys. Do you think that studio headphones should be the kind of thing that is thought of as strictly a reference point to get a sense of how it sounds on normal equipment? Or should studio headphones be specifically aiming to be used as a tool to fix some of the problem areas in the mix, like, for example, where the S's, F's, and T's may fall, and then you get some of these tunings like what you find with the beyerdynamic headphones, and now this one as well. Let me know which side of that you fall on, and maybe there's room for both here. I'm not going to rule that out either. But as far as music listening is concerned, this headphone comes in at around $400, right now at least. And I think for music listening, this has some really stiff competition at that price point. You have headphones like the HiFiMan Sundara, you have headphones like the R70X, you have the HD600, again, with a little bit of bass EQ, it gets really, really good. You know, $400 isn't that far off from the Edition XS from HiFiMan as well. And you also have some closed-back headphones that are more referencey sounding than this one. Again, in the AKG K371, that's at a much lower price tag. And you also have some beyerdynamic headphones that, while are maybe not quite as good as this one for their overall tonal balance, they achieve a similar kind of sound at basically half the price. So I do think that the price here is a little bit extra. It's a little bit difficult to say that this is competitive at the $400 price point. But for its build and its comfort and the all-day wearing aspect, if you are somebody who is willing to do a little bit of EQ, I'm absolutely going to recommend this headphone because it is so comfortable. It is such an all-day headphone, and with just a couple of adjustments, you can get something that sounds great, and you can wear it like all week if you want to. So do I recommend this headphone? Well, if you're looking for something that is warmer or neutral, no, I do not. But if you're looking for something that is V-shaped or a little bit brighter, then I do recommend considering this one. And if you're specifically looking for that pro use application where you want extra treble to identify flaws in the mix, this is worth consideration as well. Anyways, that is the conclusion that I've come to. But as usual, if you're interested in deep diving on the measurements of this headphone, that will be linked in the description. You can also check out the written reviews that we do up on the audio files on headphones.com. And of course, join us on Discord. That's where you can chat with us and weigh in on all the various different products that we've covered and chat with like-minded audio folks. And that does it for me. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.